everyone, for episode 22 of Ethos podcast. And this episode, we're going to do a couple of different things. But the main topic, as every episode has a main topic, is I'm calling this being taken advantage of. And who better to talk about that than people who have taken advantage of me? No, than Chris and Ben. I couldn't stop myself. So introduce yourself, mate. Let's go with Ben. You first, mate.
Hey guys, I'm Ben. Back playing some 40k. So here to pest your ear holes again.
That's
But
right.
not in the way Simon probably thinks I am. So
That's right. And another one, one of my favourite people is Mr. Chris Wright. How you going, mate?
Okay, Simon, I'm doing great. Always happy to be here, and yeah, this is an interesting topic, so keen to chat about it.
Excellent. But the other things we're talking about is you guys just absolutely smashed a 3-man team event on the weekend. So I thought, we'll use that to ease people into the actual, interesting topic. Because, smacking over New South Wales blokes is, Queensland have been doing that for what, 10 years now? So, it's just... Like, I wish Duck was
Is
here.
that right?
Is that right? We would be ripping into it.
can't help himself, can he?
I can't. I'm really sorry. I can't. Anyway, and we'll also be talking about some of the new changes, but more so something that is absolutely dear to my heart. One of my absolutely favourite factions is Dark Elder. And Chris, I know you do bad things with Dark Elder, so that will be a big chunk of our conversation. So, I do, because you guys are here and you don't come on that often. Can you please take us through it, mate? Tell us about the team event, what you ran, how the feeling of the event. Yeah, feel free to talk. We'll start with Ben. Go for it.
Well, Chris dragged me and another guy we know called Sean. Shout out to Sean to a 3-man, which is an odd number, I will say, of 3-man team event, RTT style, down in Maitland, and it actually led for a really fun weekend in terms of, there's a little bit of pairings to mix it up a bit, but it's also just nice playing with two of your mates, playing some 40k. So yeah, we went down there and played. That was on the Saturday just gone, and we did pretty well. We ended up first. So yeah, it was a great day out.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was a really fun day, and it certainly wasn't too hard to get Ben to come and join us for the day. I know that he hasn't been playing so much for a bit, but he was itching to get back into it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it actually, and I think the excitement of like waiting for the balance update and stuff again. Like, I didn't really know what I was looking for. I was just like, I'll run sisters because I won't have to paint as much. That was just my thought process about what faction. So, but yeah, it ended up being a great day. Chris, did you want to tell them kind of like what you ran for your Drakari? Because we knew as soon as we saw that this detachment came out in the update that Chris was literally automatically going to be on Drakari even if it was just had a whiff of being half decent, and that meant Sean actually got to play Marines, so that means that he got whatever he wanted after that. So it worked out pretty well.
Yeah, the Drukhari were absolutely awful at the start of the edition, as I think most of us know. They kind of they were Codex Darklands, and that was about it. But it was really exciting to see them get all these buffs. So many more things became viable, and I've been really enjoying having units and transports this edition, and this new Drukhari detachment is just all about the transports. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. I was very excited to bring it. Simon, I'm sure you're just as excited about the new Drukhari detachment. Is that right?
Oh yeah. Look, I've actually played games.
Yeah.
I've played multiple games in a day. That's and if you've listened to any of these episodes of the last like 2 months,
Oh, you are keen then,
oh,
in that case. Yeah.
yeah. I had played on last Friday. I had 2 friends come over, and I played one game after another, no breaks. I am pretty keen.
So yeah, it was tremendous fun to get to bring that out, and that it felt very, very strong. And yeah, I definitely recommend anyone who's got some Drukari collecting dust at the back of the shelf to bring them out, and now's the time.
Yeah, and look, we'll definitely talk about that in a bit. So just for the event, why why 3 man? I'm curious. So if you last episode we talked, Jack and I kind of pontificated about the difference between a 4 man event, 5 man, and maybe what the kind of best um, uh, kind of team number would be to practice for the 8 man. Is there a difference between 5 man and 4 man and 5 man? We've concluded yes, there is, because we've now done a whole bunch of 5 mans here in Brisbane. Is there much of a difference between 5 man and 6 man? Because I know a couple of events do 6 man. I think WA do their 6 man, and does that give a kind of a better representation to 8 mans, for example? Because when you do pairings, you've got in a 5 man, you've got in essence 2 pairs and a flop of just one player, whereas in the 6 man it's 2 pairings and a double flop, right? And that's more closer to 8 mans, which is 3 pairings and a double flop. So anyway, like that was a 5 seconds summary of a whole conversation from last episode. But why 3 man? Is it just to fit in one day, or was there a more meaning into it?
I don't think either has asked Jacob exactly why he picked 3 men. Is that right, Ben?
I certainly haven't. I'm assuming it was probably more just to encourage attendance to the event. I think like the RTTs have been doing well. I think he just wanted to add something different into the mix. And it's not the good games of a couple of years ago in terms of the space they've got now. So I think if it was like a couple of years ago, they might have pushed it out to 4 man. But
It's a different location, is it?
yeah, it's a different location. They've moved stores now, so it's just a touch smaller.
Right.
It's only
Okay.
just down the road. It's only down the road, but yeah. So I think like it was literally full to the brim. It had 10 teams of 3, and that's pretty. Where it used to be, the old store could have held probably double that quite comfortably.
Oh yeah, I mean,
But
I've gone to that old store a couple of times for the 4 man teams.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, the old Overwatch ones.
Mm.
Yeah, so I think, and it definitely did encourage attendance. We actually had people, a couple of, uh, well, probably a group of 6 guys come down from Armadale Coffs area, which is that's a fair hike. That's 4 hours, 4.5 hours. So they've put some legwork into getting there.
Mm-hmm.
So and they did well on the day too. So
Excellent. All right. So there wasn't any particular rhyme
no,
or
I
reason.
don't think so. I don't think so. Not that I'm aware of anyway. I didn't actually inquire either. So it's
That's
like
all
Chris
right.
said.
Well, both of you have experienced 8 man, right? Um, it's
Yep,
interesting.
indeed.
I can answer this question for 4 man, but I've never actually done a 3 man team event. Is there much experience gathering outside of just the event itself in terms of transposing that experience into like an 8 player team?
I would say no. It's not really very similar, and yeah, I'll agree with Ben. It was just sort of an attendance thing. I think honestly, with 3 players, probably the best pairing process is just to random them. Um,
It's just like
Yeah, well, it kind of just ends up like that anyway because it
just
kind of
throw at
can
people.
only yeah. You
well, I
only
mean
really got to kind
that's
of get
what
to pick.
yeah. So randoming is like that's what happens in Magic the Gathering or something. If you go to a team tournament, you just you know play against one of the random opponents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think 3 is really enough to get much in the way of pairings happening.
Mm.
But we did sort of a bit of a pairings process, and it was all good. Um, yeah, not nothing at all like an 8 man or anything like that.
Excellent. Awesome. Alrighty. Well, Ben, do you want to quickly run us through just what you were thinking about? So this was using the new rules, yeah?
Yeah, it was.
So, any theme of your sisters? It was like just
So
MSU all the way, or anything
yeah,
in particular?
I think it. So I think like there's a little bit of a. So I opened up the app when I originally started looking at it and realised I couldn't really do anything till the balance update came, which was kind of a relief to me because I realised I had no idea what I was doing. So I kind of like did a bit of research like online of like currently, watched a couple of battle reports, kind of. I haven't really been in touch with it much in the last couple of months, but we've taken a break. So kind of like got a bit more stuck into it. Got the balance update, did the typical sisters thing, which is like start with all the characters. So I started with 7, probably 6, and then I kind of just whittled it down, and then I've realizations of like how cheap things were, and looking at like composition, looking what I'd actually need, and then ended up just with 3 characters, which all, well, except for the Triumph, operate pretty independently. So I literally just went for put as much kind of stuff in the list as I possibly could, really. I was pretty happy with it overall. There are some minor changes I'd make overall, but I'll give you a quick rundown. I gave a missionary with Saint the example, which he just runs solo. When he gets when it dies, he gets D3 additional miracle dice. I had Morven Val, which went with Paragon. Triumph, which went with 10 Battle Sisters. 2 Rhinos, 20 Arco Flagellants, 3 squads of 2 Crusaders. Obviously, the Paragons, as mentioned before. 2 units of 10 Repentia, 2 units of 5 Multi-Melter Retributors, 3 units of Hand Flamer Seraphims, 5-mans, and 1 10 and 1 5 Zephyrim, and an Eversaur Assassin. So that was the list. It's just a lot of stuff. Like, that's a lot of units there. And I think like it allowed me to actually play. Like the Arcos give you a little bit of like they're still good, even though they put them up in points. They're still not enough, really. Like I still think you take still see list online mainly have 30.
They're the ones that
I didn't have.
fight on death and do like 6 attacks, just over.
Yeah, they can. Yeah, they can get. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. So
I played that against Alex Terrison. It's annoying.
yeah, it is annoying, and they actually can stand on a bit of a point. So it gives you the opportunity just with having like the double repentia and just so much stuff which has little cheeky feel no pains here and there.
Yep.
And
two
you can really like
with feel no pain. They should almost be illegal. Like
yeah, there's 4-ups too much as well. Like at least they don't have at least they haven't got much going on before that. But
nothing triggers me more than it's like, all right, you go through, here's 4 2 wound, we'll go to a splinter cannon or something like that, right? It's like, yep, here's 4 2 damage ones. You're thinking, oh, maybe I'll kill 2 or 3, and it's like the first one, pass 1, fail 1, pass 2, then failed, 2, and it's like, oh fuck, I've killed 1. All right, great.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And I think like sisters offer something really interesting in the terms of like face value. They offer like okay-ish data sheets which don't really, do too much. And there's a lot of synergies. Everyone knows how sisters play. But in the index, it seems to me like a lot of what I leveraged to do a lot of my damage wasn't necessarily going in with big hits apart from like the Paragons and Val. Like that's probably my hammer unit. Was using fight on death and out of phase stuff, like making sure I had CP for shooting on death, fighting on death, and that's literally how I was getting through these matchups. Angels. It's not Angel Sacrifice. That's the Blood Angels one, but that Suffering and Sacrifice, making them hit. Putting 2 units into melee, like with a Zephyrim and an Arco Flagellants, making them kill. Only be able to attack the Seraphim, which were going to die anyway. And stuff like that, like, and just and getting loads of out of phase stuff, and that's kind of how I was whittling down because you don't really like they don't no sisters, even Arcos, like where I played Ultramarines, and they just they can kill Arco squads, no worries. But just having that stuff and just dogpiling objectives, giving them like Repentias, some Arcos, and maybe a missionary if they're going to hit you really hard. and then being able to bring that back up after the shooting phase, still hold it, get some miracle dice, have the triumph nearby to get even more sixes, and stuff like that. That's basically kind of, it's just all about just dogpile objectives and just using out of phase damage to kind of keep chinking away at them, and then you just out attrition them. So, and because we've got so many units,
it's because you've got miracle dice, and like feeling of pain and those kind of strats where you, what popped into my head was like expected damage, right? So like the top players that I've played against, a lot of them, and including myself, right? We rely on this should kill this. I played enough to know that it can spike down, up or down, so I'm going to make sure that this unit here is also can target that. But if not, it's got this other target, right? Like this is in general like how you do target priority. You don't line up like 6 things onto one thing. And Eric's literally talked about this on one of the podcasts where he'll get Imperial Guard tank lined up against one of his gaunt things, and one will shoot. He'll just take the front run, and it's like, all right, now this one can't shoot, and you would get completely fucked in terms of not getting the expected damage that you're relying on because of your activation lock in essence. Anyway, like I'm kind of meandering around the point here, but
no. I know exactly what you're going to say about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So when an army, and this is what I found about Elder and in general, like this is why I thought Elder were too strong now with less fate dice and less kind of funky mechanics. The ability to kind of screw with the expected value or outcome of a exchange has dropped. Whereas armies that can kind of screw with that, especially with a bit of a spike, they're in essence the top of the tier in essence. I've got a specific example. Chris, remember back in 9th Ed when we were both playing Dark Elder, and our grotesque would hit each other, and I spiked a little bit on my feeling of pains, and so a combat that we had that you thought you were absolutely going to crush in essence and collapse that flank stopped, and then all of a sudden it kind of flipped back. You know what I mean? Like that's kind of what I'm trying to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. They could be swingy mechanics for sure.
Yeah, and then when you can manipulate that, so it's not just a dice thing. When you can manipulate that through, say, fate dice or through miracle dice or whatever, it's crazy. If you know what I mean? Like
you like offer what you're giving them is like like I remember times where I've played 40k before, and you give you have the baby transhuman. You think back at 9th edition, baby transhuman and stuff like that, and you give them all these little math hurdles, which they can stumble upon with dice, and keep on giving them like a 6 up invulnerable, 6 up feel no pain, whatever. The tiny little things which can just skew their math.
Mm-hmm.
But like with miracle dice, it's giving the player the agency to actually manipulate that themselves on top of the randomness of the other player's dice.
Yeah, it's why Wraiths, Necron Wraiths. This is why, in my opinion, they're still very strong in just terms of sucking up things. Like you got a 4 up invo, 4 wounds with a 5 up feel no pain. Like that is such an annoying kind of thing because there's like 7 different things you got to kind of hurdle through, and then when you finally kill something, they res. It's like, oh my god, why would you fucking die?
No, it's definitely so. It's a mechanic, just like fate dice, but I think obviously sisters lean more into it because there's so many ways, and other characters can have influence on how many you get or what they turn into. But it's a mechanic where it allows a lot of skill. So there's a high skill ceiling with it. Like there's obviously the obvious ones, like you Overwatch and you can just squeeze a melter shot in, and another thing with sisters is what people forget is like those, if you can get lots of 6s through the triumph, most of the sisters army has a 6 up invulnerable.
Yeah.
So like all the actual battle sisters do, and like the actual Adeptus Sororitas. So like you can all of a sudden you're just getting little get out of jail free cards here, and which can really be like leveraged at the end of shooting phases, or that end game when people are just like their resources are down at the bottom and they need to squeeze every last bit of juice of it, and they can see you've got some sixes, because sometimes by that back end of that game you've got a fair few dice. And you're like, I can use, there's 4 up and vulnerables here, there's 6 up and vulnerables army wide, I've got all these dice, so it can really be a bit of a head spin for them. So
no, I know I've said this in the past, and I'm pretty sure both of us, Chris and Ben, we've talked about this in different eras, that I instinctively know when something is strong if it annoys me. I think I've specifically told you this, Chris, where it's just like, that annoyed me. Whatever that is, you need more of it.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Yeah, so I know that, like, when because you've got limited time in 40k, in a game, generally, if you're using clocks, things like that, if you spend 5-10 minutes trying to work out, all right, how do I get the most efficiency, so to speak, out of my units here, and not over investing too much into making sure something dies that has to die, but also not under investing too much that if you spike or you manipulate it through a couple of your mechanics that you can activate, then like that is time. Like I know I've wasted tons of time doing exactly that, like almost second guessing myself. And when you can control it, like when you can have an army wide buff, in essence, of confusalize your opponent, that seems to me like that's probably why sisters in general are pretty good, and people like yourself and Alex play them.
yeah, there definitely sometimes there's moments where you feel like you're a big brain, but like I feel like it it's definitely something that even when you're a good player, like I'm not saying I am, I'm just saying in general, like your first pick up sisters, you can see them after about 5 games really start to click with their dice, and they're just immediately like a looking in their pocket for those miracle dice kind of thing. So it's really it's definitely a deeper mechanic that like definitely gets lust to learn more, and to play more of that faction once they get kind of into it, and they have that moment where they've kind of got out of jail free with it, and they've just seen the power, and they just go, oh, they love it. They just it just spurs them on to play more.
All right. So moving on to the next army. So Chris, we are playing Euro Truck Simulator when we play Dark Elder now with this new detachment. Take us through your list, mate.
So I had an Archon with the a can't be overwatched when getting out of transport enhancement with 10 incubi, and another Archon with 5 incubi. I had 2 Cabalite squads and a squad of witches, which all had venoms to help them split up into 2, and half of that witch squad was accompanied by a succubus. Then there were a couple of raiders for the incubi that I mentioned. There were 2 Chronos, 2 units of Mandrakes, 3 units of Scourges with Dark Lancers, and 2x2 Talos.
Very nice. So you didn't run Lilith?
I don't have Lilith, yes. So I didn't do any borrowing or anything like that for this event, so I don't have Lilith. I only have 15 incubi, so I was very happy with the list, but if I had access to Lilith, I definitely would have run her.
I'm 99% sure I have 2 Liliths, so I could maybe hook you up, mate.
Righto. We'll chat afterwards. I appreciate it.
It's kind of like me. I've got 2 solitaires, like the Harlequin solitaires. I for some reason have 2 of those.
Yep.
I don't know why.
Were the solitaires always special characters, or
they've
epic
always
heroes?
been. You can only take one.
Okay, righto.
I also have Jane Czar. Like I've got the old model of Jane Czar and then the new model of Jane Czar. 2 of those, just in case.
Always be prepared.
Oh, absolutely. All right. Anyway, so back to the list. I mean, that's a strong list. and why I call it Euro Truck Simulator is, I think anyone running the new detachment that doesn't start with 6 Venoms, I think is doing it wrong. They just add
Right.
too much for what the detachment wants you to do and the value that you get from the detachment. I don't know if you ran 5 or not, but just for me,
I'm 3 Venoms short. I've only got 3 Venoms in the list.
you're doing it wrong, mate. I'm sorry.
Is that right? Okay. I'm curious to hear what you put in the 6 Venoms. Like, is it all Cabalites and Incubi, or do you get something else going in there?
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
some witches, obviously.
I've been testing everything. But before I just jump deep dive into that, so how did you find the list like for the event? I'm just trying to link it to the event as well before we start deep diving all Dark Elder stuff, and then we lose Ben forever.
Yeah, so the list was really good. So the Talos were an interesting one, partly because of just models I had available. Um, so I think in general in teams they have a decent place in that between the Scourges and the Talos you can absolutely bully the mech lists, right? Any knights, anything like that. They don't want anything to do with you. So I think that's good, though. With the 3 man team format and how pairings were done, um, essentially they were just getting to pick who played against me. Like it wasn't in the regular teams where they would put 2 lists up and I'd pick which of the 2. It was just like they got to pick who played against me or Ben, because we were sort of protecting my mate Sean's list a little bit more,
Right.
because his was a bit more skewed to need to play against melee things. Well, sorry, you know, not too heavy shooting at least. So yeah, they were sort of unsurprisingly pitting very monster heavy lists against me. I played against Demons round 1, Magnus round 2, and Double Catan Necrons round 3. So it's not surprising that my Haywire didn't have great targets, but does have a place.
Yeah, yeah. No, look, I've how many games? Probably about 7 or 8 in the last like 2.5 weeks, and um, I'm still umming and ahhing about the Talos. They're good, especially at the like I was running them when they were at 100 points, and at 80, I still think they're good, but they're hard to get angles too, if you know what I mean, and they don't really work as strongly with the detachment that what it's trying to do, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think their role is more as a sort of counter threat, which that it's more of a proactive detachment. I think so. It sort of doesn't quite fit,
Yeah.
but it's still they still can be good, and I wouldn't fault someone for bringing them.
No, I mean like on last week I was running 6 of them. This week, not so much. I'm testing something else out, but um, the thing that I wanted to talk about, just about Dark Elder and kind of your list, is your scourges. Um, I I I did one test game with the scourges. I can see the value in them. What in this new detachment, you're generally starved for pain tokens outside of having them to take a Chronos, and then if you don't like if you kill something on your go turn, you want to have like 2 or 3 pain tokens to dump out. If you don't have that because you've been dumping them into scourges for 2 turns and you haven't been killing stuff, um, it's a pain in the ass. I'm kind of reflecting back on my game. It was I had some scourges, I was playing Necrons, and I was a very sad boy. Um, and so I'm in my mind. I don't want to. I know they're strong. I know Scari runs them. I know pretty much anyone I'm talked to. Um, they are strong and they have a place. But in this detachment, where if you're going to be going into melee in essence, heavily, because again, this is what the detachment is suggesting you should do in essence. Um, I on that go turn, I really want a couple of pain tokens, and if you don't have them, it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah, I I think I empowered scourges every turn of every game. So I think there was 15. I played 15 turns of Warhammer. I had 3 units of scourges. I probably did so possible 45 empowerings. I probably empowered them 30 plus times over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
But I also had pain tokens for every melee unit I needed. I didn't find pain tokens to be a restricted resource at all. So I
Okay.
had two Cronus in the list, and I found that almost every time in the whole tournament that I used a pain token, there was a Cronus there to help me try and refund it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I found that quite easy to have be in position for. And then you get some kills with your shooting, get some kills with your melee. Yeah, that wasn't an issue at all for me.
Okay. Because the thing I reflect about, and I've talked to a couple of people about this, is that in the mirror, what I'm thinking in the mirror, I'll be able to catch your scourge, or against
How's that?
anyone who's got like out of line of sight shooting. You have to kind of reserve your scourge. This is in my mind. This is what I'm saying. Like if I had the one game against the Necrons, so I haven't had many games of scourges, so I don't know exactly how true this is, but it's more, if I've got scourges and they've got something that shoots out of line of sight, I have to reserve them. I have to make sure I get the value out of it and put pressure on. Or if I'm playing against someone like myself who's running the list, I'll talk about my list, or like my Tyranid list that I ran up until 3 weeks ago, which was 30 Gene Stealers. I'm going to catch those scourges, and it just makes me sad. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with deep striking scourges. That's totally fine. Yeah, I think it's going to be a lot harder to catch scourges than you're suggesting. You can block them with by putting other units in front. You can be careful with how you place them, and then they're not expensive. I would say scourges are the best unit in the army. Yeah, there's no way I'd drop a unit. So I'm going to suggest a slightly different approach to what you were talking about before about it being a melee army. I think that's a trap. And I think so. Looking at the stats, I think they had a 45% win rate over the weekend, and don't think they did that well the weekend before. I think that's because people are viewing it as a melee army. I think it's an army that it does melee. You can do some very good melee units, but it's also very good at shooting. It's very good at movement, and you just get a lot of stuff. I think um, you don't want to lean too heavily into one of those things. You want to have a balanced army that does all of them. And so if you lean too heavily into the melee, a lot of people are taking too many characters. So you'll see people with like triple Archon, Drazar, and Lilith. Um, so spending that many points on characters is going to really eat into the amount of stuff that you can have, and it's particularly going to eat into the amount of shooting you can have. So I think the army loses its balance. You start to become really vulnerable to things like opponents with custodies with all their access to fights first. Things that fight on death start to become more of a problem. Yeah, I think you're really opening yourself up to a lot of issues, and you want the focus to be a little bit more balanced.
I don't disagree that you need some balance in there, but and you described in essence the list I ran on Friday, where I've lent heavily. I've gone just like almost full MSU with a whole bunch of characters, and funnily enough, I actually played Custodies on the weekend on the Friday. Um,
How'd it go?
yeah, no, it was a good win to me.
Okay.
The fight first, um, it was annoying for one turn, but with triple units of incubi and getting through a battle shock meant they couldn't do it. And I was running Talos in that unit, so their fight hurt, but you can kind of mitigate some of their punching, and they run out of CP very very quickly, because you've got the Vect as well. So you know, a lot of their stuff is battle tactics, and you vect it now that they can't use it pretty much for the rest of the game, especially like the 2 CP -1 damage one.
Yeah, okay, interesting. My main focus on Custodies would be leaning on the Dark Lancers, with merely to be a way to, attack them from a different angle. But I'm very interested to hear that you did manage to have a good win against Custodies with a melee heavy list.
Yeah. Oh, well, look, I'm not. I have been thinking about this for at least 2 weeks now. As I said, like after that first game where I was running the Scourges, I don't know. It turned me off a little bit because I can see ways I can counter it, but maybe it's because I'm not playing people like yourself, or Eric, or like what I would consider the top Dark Elders in the mirror match, and I might overestimate how easily I can catch it. Let's just put it that way. So my list, I'll go through quick. I've got 3 of them that I've run, 3 main ones that I've run over the last 3 weeks. The first one was a bit more shooty, right? So, as I said, I start with 6 Venoms. To me, the ability to get the most out of the new detachment is a priority, because I think the changes that they did, I'm a big fan of. And Venoms enable every part of the detachment. You don't get your bonuses unless you jump out. Some of the strats are all to do with vehicles and things like that, right? And you want your CP generally for your big hitting things. This is in my mind, like the big 10-man, incubi unit, for example. And so you don't want to be using CP on miscellaneous things. And so Venoms enable all of that, and that's why, in my mind, all my lists after the first one. I think my first one had 4 Venoms, and then I went 6, and I've just stayed 6. Because jumping out and getting Dark Lancers with ignore cover is huge, in my opinion. So first list, 4 units of Cabalites split up, and then 3 units of Incubi with 3 Archons, right? There's a basic list, Lilith, and then I add in, so what I've learned is that Cabalite units, they can be bullied a little bit, and so I throw in just a naked Drazar and a naked Urian in those Cabalite units, and now the Urian, for example, can jump out, do an action or do something while the Cabalites put down some shots. The Cabalites jump back in, and Urian's kind of still safe-ish, because he can stand back up, right? So, that's a whole package. No one's really going to go and bully it, because Urian's a pretty good combat person by himself, and that package is not particularly expensive, and it just does so much. So Urian, a 5-man Cabalite in a Venom, I love it. I've got now that since the last 2 weeks now. So that was one less, more shooty, so kind of like on your thing, but again, no scourges. The next list that I was testing out, so that was last week, similar-ish list, only 2 units of cabs, 6 Venoms, but then 6 Talus. And so, very fun list. It can take a hit, absolutely. But what I noticed is because of the way you kind of play Dark Elder, and you know what I'm talking about. You've seen me, and anyone who's following anything I've been doing the last 12 years, if you just literally watch on, say, Godhammer, which was the old channel that they had, you can just watch me play Dark Elder, and you can understand what's going to be happening. I'll be in a big circle around at the edges of the table, just shooting in and just jumping back in and out, etc. Talus, they give your opponent a target. They anchor. They're great for anchoring and just holding and say, I need to hold this. But conversely, they give your opponent saying, hey, here's something that you can chase around, because you're not going to ever get this Venom with Lilith and things until they've engaged, whereas this you can actually touch. That's what I noticed with the 6 Talos. And so I haven't played a game with this yet, but after probably a couple of hours of thinking and playing around with my 7th iteration of this list in 3 weeks, I've gone probably what you would call a complete mistake. and I'm okay with that, mate. Is I've gone full characters, and boats. So 3 Archons, 1 Archon with the no Overwatch who joins the 10-man Lucky Ranch, 10-man. What are they fucking called?
Incubi?
Incubi, yep. So 10-man Incubi. So I've got 2 main hammers, 10-man Incubi with an Archon, no Overwatch, and a 10-man Witch with Lilith, who just goes in and smashes face. I do have a bit of play because I've got the 6 Venoms where I can kind of split it up, because Lilith with just 5 Witches is still plenty fine. So 3 Archons, Lilith, Drazar, Urian, and 2 Succubuses. And then I've gone...
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I've gone 3 Cabalite units, big 10-man Witch and a 5-man Wreck, and then 2 Raiders, 6 Venoms, 10 Incubi, 5 Incubi, 5 Incubi, 5 Mandrakes. So I'm going to be testing that out this week and see how that goes. But I think something like this fits my playstyle. I don't know if it's stronger than yours, and I still haven't run the triple scourges with the Coronas like your style. Like I've written the list, but I haven't actually tried that. I did just 2 units of scourges, and I just didn't like the feel of that. And then I started thinking about ways that I can be abused, and I just feel sad.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting that you've had the opposite experience, opposite takes. Yeah, like I haven't gone that heavily into the melee lists. I sort of in theory sort of noticed some weaknesses, so steered away from them. But the only 3 games that I've played with them have been that RTT, because after I spent a fair bit of January in China, I haven't really had much of a chance to play. Sort of just getting back into it after that. So yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah. So maybe I'll have to give that style a go. I really do like the idea of the naked characters, because I think it gets around the problem of putting too many eggs in one basket. If you're sort of taking all the really expensive units, you are going to run out of stuff. You're going to run out of screens, things to put on objective. But some naked characters sort of lets you take them without committing so much to one unit. So very interesting.
And what I was thinking about as well, like I still have some shooting. It's not like none. Like triple cabs and 2 raiders and 6 venoms. That's some shooting. It's not as much as yours, but it has some. It's respectable. And if someone picks fix against me and goes, all right, I'm going to go for assassinate, which possibly a bait, well, my characters can just kind of sit back and do all the actions, and like, you guys go play canasta over there while the rest of my army does things, and they'll kill maybe 2 or 3 characters, and that'll be it. Like that's my theory.
Yeah, no, I think you can definitely play around. Just like if someone picks bring it down, it's like, all right, they'll get a few, but it's not like you have to commit every venom or anything like that. You can certainly be defensive.
Yeah, and they'll overextend some ways. Like, oh crap, I need to get onto this point, but I have to go kill that character over there. Fine, and then Urian just stands back up and laughs.
I've forgotten. In this edition, do you get points? Is it just if they're dead at the end of the game, or if you kill them once, do you get the points?
No. Urian does. He will count. Yeah, but they'll have to commit a lot, because Urian's the equivalent of 20 wounds. So 4-up info, 4-up feeling the pain. Again, he's another one of those things that we were just talking about with Ben. It's like the maths just get thrown out.
I feel like calling someone counting a 4-up invuln as doubling someone's wounds. I feel like that's a bit rich.
Yeah, that's how it works. What are you talking about?
No, but that's like saying, that's like when I hear 40k players, right, and they walk away from the table and they go, man, I can't believe my dice rolls weren't average. And it's like, what does that mean? Do you know what I mean? Like, you can talk about probability of dice rolls, but it's still a dice, and they whinge about. You can't you're basing everything on probability there.
Yeah.
I
What
can.
about 4 Feel No Pain? Would you double the wounds there?
Yeah. Well, the reason I would do it for Feel No Pain and not for an invulnerable save is because the expectation is that they're going to get some kind of save anyway, right? If someone's attacking you with an AP4 weapon, sure, a 4-up invulnerable save does effectively double your wound output. But if they're attacking you with an AP0 weapon, a 4-up invulnerable save is much worse than just power armor. So,
Yeah.
the Feel No Pain is not situational. The invulnerable save is.
Look, that is a good point. Like, my whole army has minimum AP2, so that's why that's why I'm considering anything below 4-up invo is useless.
Okay.
I love it. All right, look, I think not that I love talking too much good things about GW, but I think they've done a very good job with this detachment and all the changes for Dark Elder. What is a good indicator of that is when two, I'll blow smoke up our butts right now, two good players can come into a look at a rule set in essence that's in essence a limited because it's still an index, and come up with two distinctly we'll say unique or two distinct armies that both seem to work. Like, to me, that is fantastic.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a great detachment. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. So, all right, props to GW. Whoever had the bright idea there, you get a big tick from me, and that's I haven't said that in probably about a year, so good stuff. Awesome. Alrighty. Anything else you guys want to just talk about the 3-mans or any of the new changes? Anything you want to pontificate before we jump into the topic?
Good to go.
No, let's jump in.
Alrighty. So, I'll set this up, and then I would love to hear your thoughts on these things. So, the topic is about it's kind of like a multi-layered thing. It's when you play a game or when you interact with any human, your expectation is of in general wariness, right? Like, just when you meet some stranger, especially like you play a tournament, it's like 500 people, 1,000 people, like some of the big ones. You're wary of the person. However, our community, and we'll call it the global community of 40k, in general, a lot of those kind of natural instincts that humans have about kind of wariness and strangers and things like that is lowered because you're a bunch of nerds, right? And so, like, I know when I'm playing, video games and things like that, if you're playing a video game with someone else and they're also playing that video game, there's already that connection. You know what you've given up, or what you are not doing, or whatever lack of social skills you might have, that you're standing there or sitting there at that point, and you've kind of projected that onto that person. So that normal, natural wariness of I need to be on guard, so to speak, with this person seems to go away, right? Unless you know that person or you hear something bad about it, but just in general, right? This is what I've noticed. Just before I keep going, would you agree with that kind of just general premise?
I guess you probably put a bit more thought into it than I ever have.
All right, Ben.
Yeah, I was literally thinking of that as that same phrase. Like, I've never thought about it quite as deeply as that. But yeah, look, I think to a certain, there's always a bit of a. Sometimes there can be some some apprehension there. But yeah, look, I think I understand what you're saying.
Yeah. Like, let's say you're walking down the street in Sydney, right? You're not just gonna, if some random person comes up to you, regardless of how they're dressed or whatever, like how they're dressed impacts that. But just if some random person comes up to you, you're going to be wary. That's what I mean. Like, just your human inclination, like you as an animal has got these things that you've intrinsically got, right? Unless you're completely naive about the world.
I mean, I wouldn't generally be wary if someone just came up to me and asked me for directions, I'd just happily give them to them. I wouldn't be thinking too much about it.
You're a much more trusting person than I.
Yeah, yeah. Never got me in trouble so far.
No, I'm not suggesting. Anyway, I'm saying that humans have this, just in general. Like, you know, just in general, humans have this. You could maybe suppress it, or maybe you are more trusting of your fellow man. But regardless, humans as a species have this. However, I have noticed, at least for myself, that when you're in a space, we'll call it a collective space, that you have in essence, sacrifice to get there, regardless of what that sacrifice is, and you meet someone at that collective space who's also, you're projecting on them the same kind of sacrifice, you don't have those same kind of barriers up. And you, in general, put forward, like I try to make sure whenever I say hello to people or interact with anyone in 40k world, that I am much more friendly than I will say normally am. And I'm a reasonably friendly person, but I am way more friendly when I'm playing someone, especially new, that I haven't played against at a tournament or something like that. Anyway, so that's my general. I just want to kind of lay that kind of foundational piece because it does link into. So the topic is being taken advantage of, right? And I'm just trying to link some of these kind of psychological ideas. What happens is when you're taken advantage of, it's in essence like a betrayal, and you know those Dante Inferno thing. It's betrayal is one of the most impactful things that can happen to a person. It kind of shakes your core and your understanding of, you know, humans and things like that, right? It's in my mind, it is a big hit to your psyche, and it can actually affect, in my mind, your mental health. And at least it did for me, and it's why I wanted to talk about this. So, laying the foundations, humans in general have, you know, this wariness. However, when you have in a collective space, you lower those and you make acquaintances much quicker, let's say. So, when I then layer on top of that a familiarity, I think, and if I said that incorrectly, it's forgive my English, but when you lay on top of that a familiarity with playing in this game for, you know, decades, and doing tons of stuff within the community, which all three of us have done, and we'll say, you know, playing at the top tiers and all this type of stuff, right? And then most of the people who kind of you interact with within the community know who you are, right? And so I think all three of us kind of fall into that category, where the vast majority of people that we'll interact with at a 40k competitive tournament, they have heard of us and all know who we are, right? So you kind of have these multi-layered things where people know who you are, you're generally respected within the community, and you do a lot for the community, and so you trust them, and you've let your guard down, in essence, right?
Yeah.
So you're in that situation, and I actually talked about this probably 6 months ago, and I think it was to Vander when we were talking about the mental health stuff, where I enjoy playing 40k, and I don't really have shit games. You know, realistically, we'll say outside of the one I'm going to be talking about from a couple of months ago, but I don't have that because I can just enjoy the game. I don't have to, you know, spend, you know, half my game triple checking that this person's not trying to cheat me, or, you know, they're not surfing models and things like that, because of all these kind of multi-layered things. We're in a shared environment. They know who I am, and they know I contribute, and, you know, we've got all this in there. I generally have really fun, enjoyable games because I can just enjoy the game, enjoy the company, etc., etc. I actually talked about this and how my enjoyment of 40k, like especially near the end of 9th, was so great. That's why I loved 9th, say more so than 10th, but I love 9th so much, was not just because the game was, in my opinion, better, but also the environment, like everything to do. Like, I would play a game and I would just enjoy the game. I didn't have to think about all this other bullshit. And when that is then when that kind of pact is broken, um, to me it's so impactful that I'd forgotten the kind of defenses that I would have or did have, um, and yeah, it affected me for a good couple of weeks. Both to the enjoyment of the game, but also just kind of like shook my, my belief in my fellow man, so to speak. Now, um, some of the things that I had done. So back in 2022, we did the World Team Championships. We played a number of players who, like, they had the spirit of the game, but I ensured that my defenses were up. You know what I mean? Because we had been practicing and really focused on, and so I made sure that I was not taken advantage of, and there's a bunch of things I did, and I'll talk about them later when we get to that section. But when you're not doing those things, and you do get taken advantage of, it affects you so much. Like I just wanted to kind of talk about this for a little bit because I've been thinking about it for a while, and it affected me for a good couple of weeks, and I just wanted to kind of ask you guys: is anything I've been saying, does this kind of resonate with you? In maybe you haven't thought about this in terms of 40k, but does this resonate with you, how you approach the game? And then have you had something like this happen to you? So, Chris, mate?
Yeah, so there's you definitely go in wanting to have a fun game, not wanting to have to think about these things, as you say, the good games where you don't even have to think about it, right? And yeah, of course there are times when your opponent is trying to take advantage of you, and that does sour things a lot. Yeah, I definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, and so you've had this happen to you in the past? Like, we don't have to go into details if you don't want to, but you've had this happen to you?
Yeah, it's a rare occurrence, but it certainly can happen. Yeah.
And did it when it happened, did it affect you? Like were you kind of a little bit shook? Or were you just saying, "Oh, that was like a blip"?
Yeah, it definitely does take a bit of a toll. Because yeah, the focus goes away from enjoying the game to feeling cheated, and yeah, definitely not only affects your feeling of that game, but does tend to sour the event as on the whole.
Mm. Yeah, the thing I noticed, and then I'll jump to you, Ben. But the thing I noticed was, yeah, for probably a couple of weeks, I just even outside of 40k, just in general, to as I said, my fellow man, I was just more distrustful. Like, I just noticed, like, that one experience when it just got me completely, like, it blindsided me. Like, I was not expecting it because I was in that almost Bambi like naive mode. I'm enjoying 40k. Nah, everything's going well. Boom, it happens. Like, fuck. I can't believe it. Like, I was just, yeah, it caught me for a couple of weeks. Ben, has this happened to you, mate?
It has, yeah, it has. And I think it's happened to me in other facets of life, as more so than just 40k as well. I think I'm no psychologist or anything like that, but I think like what I feel like I'm getting from what you're saying is it's a sudden feeling of vulnerability, and I think that like when with you Simon, you had felt so safe for so long, and it caught you so off guard that it probably just really just like caught you so off guard that actually shook you. And I
Yep,
think that
100%.
that's certainly happened to me. That's like because you're in when you associate like even just with fun in general, you know and you enjoy having that fun and you have it often, it just becomes a safe space. And when sometimes you'll go in the same mode in that safe space that you always go in, and all of a sudden you'll just be caught off guard on the back foot, and you'll kind of, before you've kind of caught your breath, the whole, atmosphere's changed. The whole demeanor of your opponent, the demeanor of the game, or something like that has changed. And like Chris says, it just turns, makes a game feel like it takes about an hour longer than it does. Kind of makes, just makes it a little bit awkward, and you kind of just can't wait to get onto the next. What I always find is worse in these situations is when is if you try and wear it for too long after, like if you, like obviously if it's happened, not so much to try and wear it, but if you find out that it's part of something that maybe happened previously at another event with a certain person or something like that, it can kind of, it can create a bit of a simmering pot of gossip, and that you just don't want to kind of join into. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that can kind of prolong any sort of healing. And I discourage people, if they ever feel like that and they get into that situation, that they don't enter into that echo chamber. They try and, individually deal with it and appreciate that the other person might have some stuff going on. Maybe even try and talk to that person about it, rather than joining in, into the echo chamber, really, I guess. So.
And you're kind of talking about like the how to resolve bits that I definitely want to talk about, but
Yeah, sorry, I skipped it. I just like,
no.
I've just,
This is a conversation, man. This is just us. It's like us three
Yeah.
kind of taking it. If anyone else listens to this and finds value, great. But like, I wanted to talk to someone about it, and I've talked to a couple of people here. But I thought this would be a good conversation to have, and you guys would have had experienced this.
It's a mixed emotion, right? Because not only have you felt vulnerable, but there's also a bit of anger, because it's a bit like there's an element of, mainly in the aftermath, like when it's all done and dusted and you're on your own, and it's a bit of a kind of, how dare you, kind of like, how dare you ruin my fun.
Yeah. No,
And then you've
absolutely.
got that, and then after you've kind of dealt with that frustration, you kind of think to yourself, well, did I let that person ruin my fun? Like, and it's, did I let that kind of rub up on me a bit too much there and stuff like that? So, I think that there's always good elements of reflection from both sides. I think sometimes people put too much premise on the other person not so much behaving badly, but I think that's an incorrect thing to do. Sometimes when people approach these situations, if they've had a bad game and there's someone that wears their emotions, like, certainly on their sleeve, or makes them quite apparent, and they're quite distressed or tired or up, a bit upset after their last game, or they're just not doing as well in that event as they thought they were going to. Sometimes, like, when people approach that kind of sequence of events has already started, from that person having that kind of bookended attitude a little bit, So I think there's a lot of reflection there from people. I'm not saying that people bring it on themselves, because that's definitely not what I'm saying, but I think that, like, there's definitely some people got to appreciate that sometimes they're not quite as open as they think they are in these situations as well, and I think that it's a hard one, because every one of those situations is totally different, right? As well, different circumstances.
And for me, the game itself against these type of people, and I'll jump to you, Chris, in a second, but the game it's just really tiring. Like, those games, I've noticed, like, when I'm playing those type of people, and there's a couple, and generally they'll have a reputation, and most of the time, not always, but most of the time, that reputation is earned. And when you go into those games with people that you personally and or know through reputation, has this type of, they will take every advantage over your opponent if they're not 100% on top of their rules and this and that, right? Those games are just so tiring. It's what you were just saying, Ben. You just want them over. You don't actually want to play the game. You just want it over because you're there, almost because you have to be, because of the tournament. Chris, anything else you want to kind of add about just the in this kind of, before we get into how do we stop ourselves from being a victim, so to speak, and things like that.
I think things have been covered pretty well. Yeah, happy to keep going.
Awesome. All right. Well, um, if I could jump back to you, so what is it that you do to um, make it so that people don't try this in the first place? Like, like if we don't want this to happen, there's things that we can actually do proactively so that this doesn't happen. Um, yeah, and then I've got another question after that.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things. I think in terms of being proactive, one thing I think there's just a natural advantage to being a known person in the community, as you sort of talked about before. We're all people who have been active in the community and podcasts and that kind of thing. Um, I think people are a little bit less likely to pull things against known people. They're a little more. They think they're less likely to get away with it, and they're more likely to be some consequences if they do. So I think that's just a natural advantage. But I think one thing to be proactive is to really set the tone early on in the game. So I think being friendly, being positive is a good start, but then making sure you're sort of hoping for the best but preparing for the worst. So particularly early on in the game, keep an eye on what they're doing. Um, if you think they might have something wrong with the rules, just quickly check that and be on top of it early. Because if you start sort of pulling up a rules mistake here or there early, they're less likely to keep trying it. If they are doing it on purpose later on. Of course, most of the time these things are accidental. There's a lot of rules in the game. People get things wrong, but if you're on top of it early, then you're sort of squishing it before it gets a chance to get worse.
Mm. No, that's really good. And for that kind of rules mistake um, thing, in a sense, um, and I've just written to myself, like, knowing your rules. So I know, like, especially the end of ninth and all that practice that we did, the I was the most across any rule set of pretty much any game I'd ever been at that point. And so the chances, like, that was my proactive way, is that I'd played every single faction at least once, most of the time multiple times, leading up to WTC, and I knew obscure fucking FAQs from like 7 different sources, and and so when and it happened a couple of times through the event, but I was very, very quick to doing exactly what you said, just very quick to shut that down. So literally, there was one opponent, we started the game before even turn one started. It's like, no, I don't think that's right. Can you bring up your rules? Like, just straight away, boom, no, because I know, I know what the rule is, or I'm 99% sure what the rule is, etc. Whereas, and so that's the proactive thing. Knowing your rules, or knowing the rules of the game, is the best way. But with the edition change and me not being as invested in 10th as I was in ninth, I have a blind spot. Like, there is a whole bunch of rules that I do not know. I kind of have a vague idea. I read Goonhammer, I watch battle reports, I flick through the codex, but I don't really know every single interaction of things unless it actually happens to me on the game. And so it is possible for me, because I haven't gauged that. Hey, that sounds a little bit fishy, and my trust meter hasn't ticked over. It's like the the video game where there's a guard and he's got the little sensor meter thing. It's like, oh, you've tripped over my rules sensor, and I need you to show me your book where it says that exact rule. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly where I meandered on for that, but other than knowing your rules is probably the best proactive thing I've personally done to prevent this. Because if you know what the rules are, if someone's, in essence, trying to take advantage of you because you don't have some information.
I think it as an extension to that, if something sounds a little bit fishy, sounds too good, or just sounds a bit odd, looking it up yourself while your opponent's doing their turn is a great idea. So if you've got the Warhammer app, you'll have access to at least all the indexes. Or I'll just go into Warhampedia if it's a newer codex. So I think some people feel a little bad for looking it up. It's like, oh, that's suggesting I don't trust my opponent. I mean, they might not be telling the truth. That is one thing, but more importantly, either they've got the rule right, and it's really important for you to read it yourself, and then you'll properly learn it. Right? It's things you've experienced it in the game. You go and read it. That's for me at least is a perfect way to learn the rule myself. Or they've made a mistake. They've got the rule wrong, and that's a good time to pull it up. And it's really important that you know they've got the rule wrong for future.
Mm. What about you, Ben? What's the main way that you proactively try and prevent this?
Well, like you guys touched upon pretty much the main like technical way you can do it. There's a lot of technical stuff you can do just by knowing the game well, knowing your matchup, knowing your rules, core rules, special rules, everything you said, like FAQ. I also like, for me, like certainly with the weekend just gone, it's my first time playing any sort of competitive 40k even in a garage for 6 months, and I think that I came into this weekend trying to kind of readjust the way I approach games when I go into them. I always found that this is going to shock you guys and probably everyone listening who knows me. Is that I actually talk a fucking lot, like it is just out of control, like verbal diarrhea style. And I find that when I go into this situation, I really want to make sure my opponent feels comfortable, and that I want to make sure I set the kind of vibe of kind of what the game's going to be like and stuff, and when I get there, and that can result in me just going absolutely ham for like 3.5 minutes, like flat, like without breathing. And what I've tried to do is kind of like, over the weekend as I approached it, then kind of run the pace, and kind of ease myself into it and kind of approach it more calmly and stuff like that. And I found that that's probably actually helped me more than my opponent through that thing, because I found that I just carried that demeanor throughout the whole game then, and could when they would say stuff to me like that I'm doing this, and it was a rule, because obviously I don't know that many rules at the moment. Of newer stuff at least, I could ask them to explain it, and they could talk about it. So, and because I was calmer in general, it wouldn't come up as me like, oh, can you show me that rule or anything like that. It would come out as more, oh yeah, what does that do? Tell me about that again. It's kind of like my whole kind of demeanor changed through it. And I find that if you approach the situations a little bit more calmer, and when things, if you do have to, be a bit more formal and say, oh look, I don't quite understand that rule or what you're doing here. Could you explain it to me a bit more? You're kind of starting from like a less intense kind of foundation, which is generally what I set when I went to the game, and it all came from a good place inside me. It's just kind of like the ADHD monster just kind of crawling out of me, So that's how I felt was a good way, is just trying to I've tried to level myself out, like not in a crazy way, but just trying to like make sure that I was, as approachable if they had questions about my army, which I always was, but I'd, just be a bit more calmer in my responses and stuff like that, instead of so hyped up, because I was generally usually every time I could step up to a game, I'm just generally so excited. Do you know what I mean? So, and that I used to just let that spill out of every orifice, rather than kind of just come out in a bit more of a controlled measure. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah, but like we've had dinner together. You know that both of us we talk about as much as each other.
yeah, that is true. That is true.
That's right.
We
need to like exude the essence of Chris and just inject it into both of us to get the calmness.
Yeah, I just think, like making sure you're trying to see that, like what Chris said, see the good in people. Try and see the good in people, and don't feel scared to ask them again what you're doing, because this time for me, it was coming from a place of genuinely pretty much didn't know every time I asked. didn't know what the hell was going on. So I'd be asking, you know, and I'd be learning a lot too, and I'd actually, you know, find that really, really useful and stuff like that, and move on. And obviously I'd mention how useful it was and stuff like that. So
Yeah, Chris, I know you do that in pretty much every game that you play. You know, you just exude the calmness, and then most of your games I've watched or I've played against you have just been extremely chill.
Yeah, I think it's a good approach. I think for the majority of my 40K playing time, I've been able to do that, and yeah, I think that's a great thing. There's definitely been a few times where if I've gotten a bit worn out, bit worn down by 40K, um, it becomes a lot harder to have that attitude. Um, so I think enjoying 40K is a great place to be, and it helps you to have a good attitude when you go into the game.
And I think, and we've probably touched on it a bunch of times already, but we play this, and we play this game, which that's in essence that's what it is, right? But we're playing this and we're investing this time because we want that flow state of just enjoying life in essence, right? That's if we want to go dig holes and get physical exercise, or go to the gym, we'd do that. We've said for this 3 hours, or if we're doing a tournament, this next 24, 48 hours, we want to have periods of flow where we're enjoying this game. And I think it is the upsetness that probably annoys me the most about it. It's like you Mr. Opponent or Mrs. Opponent have stolen that from me. I am investing 3 hours of my life where I am expecting flow and enjoyment, and instead I am babysitting you and everything you do, and I'm now tired, and I'm now angry at you for stealing, essence from my life. It's like that's where my brain goes. And yeah, it's like it's triggering, but it's not in a you know how some players trigger you and they it's a bit of banter. This is just like, why am I here? Like, I could be with my family, I could be doing literally anything else, but instead I have to babysit you. All right, how do we react? So to get through it in the game, but also then afterwards in the healthiest way possible.
I think in the game, I think first thing you should do is to be clear what you're unclear about. If it's something you're unclear about, for example, just be clear, like, I'm unsure of what you're doing here. And I think that I always, if in these situations, make sure I don't so much use the TO, but I just make sure that I feel like I think we should get a TO, because, like, I think it's always you get the third party in, they step up to the situation with no emotion, which I think is the most important thing. All right, because everyone's usually if emotions are high, whether it be with you, or both of you, or just your opponent, I think it's really important to remember at all times that emotion can really cloud some sort of like rational behavior, and just communicate. It really degrades communication. And I think that, like, in a game where even when you think you're the best communicator and you do your utmost to communicate, there might just be one thing you haven't communicated. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Or
it's really important.
they've missed because it's a loud venue or something like that.
Yeah. Like, and there can be those little things and be like, I did mention it. Oh, well, I didn't hear, or I don't remember you saying that. That's like, that's happened numerous times to everyone, I imagine. And then, like, if there is an issue and you say, like, say, like, what, and you can't come to an agreement, just say, I think we should get the TO. He can come and sort it out. They can come over with non-emotional response, and then you kind of just can kind of hand it over to them in that sense.
Yep.
Some things aren't quite as easy as that, I do appreciate. But I think that making sure that if you can try an approach, because remember, what you need to try and remember is don't focus on the problem so much. Try and focus on getting the solution, right? And if you can kind of shift that onto a solution-based kind of like linear progression, then you should theoretically be able to kind of eliminate at least a percentage of emotion out of it, because all you're looking to do is to make it right, because you're looking for facts and you're not searching to like pad egos or make people feel better, and that includes yourself.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
this is in essence where the TO/judges make their money, so to speak. Like this is
Yes.
the outside of organizing and wrangling the cats, so to speak, herding the cats. This is pretty much the main thing that's needed, which is when you have a disagreement, and the disagreement could be stemming from one particular player's actions or not. But when you have a disagreement, you need an independent third party to help you resolve this, because if not, then either you leave and you say, fuck this, it's not worth it. And in a team event, because I generally only play teams now, you've got a group of players that you're friends with that you don't want to let down, right? So it's you ratchet up that emotions up a little bit more, or you go to base human level, which is just punching each other in the head. You want to stop that.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that you know, like the TOs, if you ask every single TO, what's the most common thing that happens in an event is scenarios like this, whether there be justification for it happening or not, or whether it be, making a mountain out of a molehill, so to speak, or whatever, they are always going to say, why didn't you speak to me about it at the time? Every single time, because there's nothing they can do retrospectively or actively, whatever you want to call it, right? They can't do anything about that then. They are always going to want you to speak to them about it, because every TO I know, all they want to do is make sure that everyone has a good time, right? They don't want that kind of thing happening at their event. They don't want it happening at any event, let alone the one that they're running. So they would love to take an active role in making sure that both players end up having a good event, even if that ends up being a speed bump in their day. That's fine, but as long as the rest of it's plain sailing, and they would rather, come in early, nip it in the bud, so to speak, straight away, rather than then come in when it's a big thing on social media, or when someone's in their DMs or you're in their DMs later. That's not what they're going to want. They're going to want it to be resolved at the time, right when that iron's hot.
If we take it like into a real life example, it's like in a restaurant, if everything's great, like in the food, but then the person goes to the bathroom and there's no toilet paper in their stall, and they say nothing, and then they leave a 1 star. Food was fine, no toilet paper, and it's like, well, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you ask for it? Like, it's deal with it straight away. Don't do it with it afterwards.
Exactly. Well, let's another one that a lot of people can, appreciate. A lot of dad hammers out there. What about the kids? You got the kids arguing, right? And they don't do something you've asked them to do, or they're having an argument about something, and you have the means and the opportunity to go in there, sort it all out. The kids can go to bed, have their normal night like they were going to. Otherwise, it festers, and then you find out the next morning this is what happened, and you're like, well, I can't do anything about it now because it's already happened, And so that's the same thing. It's just about, and it is a hard thing to do sometimes. I can appreciate it, because going to the TO feels like, oh, we're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. But the thing is that is the exact opposite of what's happening. You are actually creating it to be a bigger deal by not going to the TO.
Yeah. All right,
Because
Chris,
if there's no resolution, then things fester.
Yeah. Chris, what about you? How do you react in these situations?
Yeah, definitely go to the TO once you're confident that something's up, or you suspect something's up is a great plan. Yeah, I think just making sure your opponent is clear, and if you feel something's up, you want to start, making sure they're rolling the dice in front of you, or like communicating properly, or measuring carefully, or you just sort of need to be on top of what they're doing. And as you mentioned, it does feel like babysitting them, which does suck, but you do kind of need to do that a little bit more in those situations.
Yeah. I wish it was something that we could do proactively that's not just like setting the scene, like you were suggesting, Ben, or like Chris and I was suggesting, is like making sure that you speak up when something's a bit shifty, or in my mind, know what the rules are, so that anything can be, to kind of say, like, and I think Magic and a few other games have this. It's like, this is the basic etiquette that you're going to have. It's like, if you're going to roll a bunch of dice, don't do it behind the thing. And if you do, if a dice goes behind, try to make it clear that, that your opponent can see what the dice roll is. Like these type of things. Yeah, I wonder if is there anything like that for 40k? Like expected etiquette things.
I think 40k. No, I don't think there is, but I think there is like unwritten codes, and a lot of players say this is what I do, and that's filtered down through the the web of social media and whatever. But I think that like it's a competitive environment, right? You can put that competitive environment in most, like, let's say games, all right? Let's not say sports, but most games and sports, and there's always, thing is sometimes the competitiveness does change people, and people react differently to it. And I think that's the key. And I think it's about people finding their groove and being competitive in a healthy way, which encourages that communicate. Everything filters down. So it's an attitude to start, I think, and then it filters down. Because like when I kind of thought I'm feeling burnt out here and I've got to get out of 40k, it's because I wasn't enjoying the game as much. But that was actually probably going to become an issue for my opponents. And my thing was I actually have to stop playing now before it's an issue for my opponents, because it's already a huge issue for me. This is a huge issue for me. Like, I am not coping with this at all, and I it's not healthy for me to play the game right now, and it's not like, not in a really like serious way, but it's not a good idea I play it, and it's not a good idea I go into the kind of like the Thunderdome, if you like, and put other people's enjoyment in risk. It's selfish of me to do that. That's how I felt.
The 3 weeks after, so the very first tournament I played, where I ran the Triple Reef Nights, right? This was back in July. I didn't play for 3 weeks after that. Like, I felt at the end, like I'd been tabling people, literally just going table, and I was just saying, I'm sorry. Like, my last round opponent, my fourth round, then fifth round opponent was literally, I'm sorry. I tabled them both by turn 2, and I'm like, yeah, I do not feel good about this in any way. I stopped playing Elder. That was my last game of Elder, and I just went, nah, I am not playing right now because I'm feeling shit.
I remember you in the chat actually after that happened. You were not a happy bunny. No.
Yeah, like, you can see, like, I've gotten past, and I've talked about this. I've gotten past winning. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to win. I'm going to push myself to try and win games. Right? I am a competitive player, but I don't need to win to prove anything to myself. Like, I've achieved everything I want to in my life, in essence, so far, and I don't need to win on and dunk on people to say, haha, I am a bigger man than you. No, I don't need to do that. And so when I'm not having that flow, I'm literally just going through the motions, playing for an hour. I can visibly see my opponent is uncomfortable, and I'm not having fun. I know exactly what you mean. Like I was in that headspace. It was like, I need to stop playing right now. Oh. Whereas Chris just went right into it and just played nothing but Elder. He's that vicious killer,
Yeah, I was preparing for WTC, so I had to, be ruthless constantly. But
I got slapped
yeah,
around so much.
we played a lot of Eldar into GSC, which GSC were very good too. But
Yeah, they were,
yeah,
but I was not as good as Chris. So that was that was the other issue. So,
But no, I'll agree with you, Simon. It did get a bit wearing. Like I sort of transitioned to playing melee Space Marines after I got back from WTC. I wanted to get away from all the Wraith Knight nonsense.
Yep. No. I could just imagine you having Eye of the Tiger, and just punching stakes and things like that.
I'm glad you can imagine it, Simon. You might have to share that with me sometime.
Oh, absolutely. I'll probably do that as the photo for this episode.
oh, you should. You
I'll
totally
just get
should
you
do that.
as the photo on top of Rocky, just punching a steak, like the half beef thing.
You can put my face on the beef. Like a neophyte, the neophyte picture.
Oh, I love it.
All right, I'm keen for it.
Excellent. Alrighty, so all right, the how do we resolve this? So, one of the things that you were talking about, Ben, is that you want to kind of get the TO involved to try and make sure that there's a resolution. You want a solution, right? And Chris, you were kind of suggesting the same thing. It's like you want to get this thing solved in a sense. Whatever it is, this disagreement. But what happens if the resolution of this, in your mind, is that they should forfeit? Because what they've done is so impactful to the game and so egregious, even if it was made in good faith. And there's tons of examples of this at the top level, like John Lennon and a few others who have made a legitimate mistake that was accidental, but they would literally just say, no, I forfeit that game, I give it to my opponent, etc. If that's where your mind goes, how should this resolve if your opponent disagrees? So how do we resolve this thing?
Well, I think that's not where your brain can go if it's your opponent's mistake. I think that's just asking for trouble, and that's asking to, put yourself in a rough mental state. If it's you that's made the mistake, then that's something you need to think through. But if your opponent's made the mistake, you leave that to them. You leave that to the TO, and you've just got to push on and try not to, sort of get into a mental spin about whether they should have forfeited the game.
Okay, so you're suggesting that don't impose what you think is right onto your opponent, yeah?
Yeah, that's not the sort of thing that I would do. I'm naturally a conflict avoider, so I can't see me going up to my opponent and saying you should forfeit the game because of what you've done. Like if there's rules mistake, then we might talk about, all right, what impact would have it had on the game if things had gone differently, and hopefully we can have a reasonable discussion about that. But like just sort of going up front and just telling your opponent they should forfeit is not something that I would look to do.
Okay. What about you, Ben? So as both the player, so if let's pretend you made a mistake, what would you do? If your opponent made a mistake and it was impactful, what would you do? And then I want you to put your TO hat on, and would you ever suggest someone should forfeit or whatever? So that's the third one.
Okay. I have to think I would agree with Chris quite fundamentally with this, because basically what Chris is saying is that you're in charge of how this lets this affect you. Like you can choose for this to ruin your day, right? Because essentially it is a choice. Like as much as you don't want to, as much as that person has overreached to make this a misery, if that was the case, they've overreached to make your life in this game a misery and to leverage a win or however it played out, it's still like you have to take some sort of there's got to be some sort of self-preservation there where you can go, all right, like he's chosen to do this. This kind of that's his choice. He's chosen to do that. That's on him. I need to choose now to rise above it, or like if you choose to react emotionally, you are, you're getting to a stage where you're just as bad as them to a certain extent, especially if you were to go over them and tell them, suggest what they should choose to do. Which, to be honest, if things are, you might be right, that's what they should do, but you can't influence that. I think that player, I think that I couldn't imagine what that player would be thinking, because to get themselves into that kind of mess anyway would be, something that I couldn't fathom personally, and how they would get there. But from a TO's perspective, I would never say to someone, you need to forfeit, because that would be like asking like a staff of mine to resign. Like I would as a TO be very open about what's happened. So as a TO, generally 95% of the time you are not at the table when incidents happen. It's lovely to say if you would be, and I think that's something that I don't know if there'll ever be a world in 40k where there's enough judges at an event to to be able to police this to the extent it should be. But what TOs need to appreciate as well is that when people are emotional, the one thing they're going to be trying to do is trying to get TOs on side, and some people in very extreme cases can do quite a lot to get you on side. And I think the most important thing is as TOs, to appreciate and understand that, like Chris, as transparently as you can, that this is you're getting told stories, you're getting told perspectives, right? And then you have to then make a decision, if a decision's needed, based on your perception of the perceptions. Does that make any sense? So you aren't like, if you aren't reading off like a fact sheet of exactly what happened, right? You are like, right. So I always look for a solution, like what I said before. So we can focus on the problem, how we got to that place later, and sometimes the problem does have to be dealt with before the solution can become, depending on how heated things are and stuff like that. But you need to base on a solution. You need to get the solution fixed, a credible solution fixed, in order to preserve, because sometimes these tables can be holding up a whole event. So you need to just make sure the event moves on smoothly. And sometimes if that resolution and the players are too emotional and too heated, that can result in something that they're both basically obstructing the event to a certain extent. And so something has to be done about them. I think that TOs just need to focus on the solution in these situations, because otherwise things just get worse. Because
but the solution may involve, though, if not asking them to forfeit, then making them forfeit. Like you've had a business before.
Exactly.
You've fired people. And you might say, "Oh, look, I'm going to have to fire you, but you can resign if you want to pretend like you have some control." In this case, in essence, it's the same thing.
Yeah, and I think that's so. What you need to do, in my opinion, is you have like basic rules in an event, right? And if you're a big event, a rough code of conduct would be great, right? But sometimes you don't have that, right? But if it's generally a rules thing, a rules based thing, where it's like, well, you broke this rule, and kind of it's evidential that you did, even though you might argue you didn't, but this is where we are, and this is the action I'm going to take. That's great. But then there are times where you just have to lean on your values as a TO/human being, and be like, okay, what you were doing, the way you were behaving, and the way you have been conducting yourself, moving models around, or whatever have been, has happened. They aren't great values to uphold. The values I uphold at my event are these values, and you've come in and you've not upheld them, and here we are, you know. And that's unfortunately, it gets to a point where you can't wrestle in the mud. You know, you have to get it done, and sometimes you've got to lean in what you think is wrong and right, you know, at the end.
Yeah, like I know for myself, like if I'm going to answer this question for myself, I have forfeited games when I've gotten something very fundamental wrong. If I've gotten, say, a single rule wrong, I'll make sure my opponent knows that how sorry I am, in essence, and I might give them like 6 takebacks for the rest of the game. Or, you get the idea. Like I bend over backwards to make sure I make up for that mistake. But at Uprising, was it 2 years ago when I went? Because the points had just changed, I think like the week before, my list ended up being 5 points too much because I forgot to add a upgrade, and it wasn't found out until after the event. And I came first in my pod. Like I didn't come any particular high place, but in my pod I came first, so I got like I don't know, like $60 or something, whatever it was. And the moment I found out about it, I immediately messaged the TOs and a bunch of other people and my opponent, my last round opponent, who, if he had got the win, he would have gotten the voucher. And I said, mate, I've told the TO, I've forfeited my games. Here, you get this voucher, etc., etc. Like I know for me, I know what I would do, and I have done in the past. I would expect, depending on how egregious it is for my opponent, because I know I can get a bit snippy / passive aggressive if my opponent takes the piss, so to speak, and doesn't seem to be really honest in their kind of not attrition, they're like, I'm very sorry, so to speak. If they just say, oh, sorry, I didn't know that, it's like, all right, mate, all right, now we're gonna, I'm gonna put my big boy pants on and treat you like a little kid here. Saying that, if something is particularly egregious and repeated and would have made a very material result to pretty much every turn of a game, if I was the TO, I would have disqualified that person. And I have been TO a couple of times, but it wouldn't have kicked them out of the event, but just disqualified that game and just say, look, you've been doing this for the rest of the tournament, don't do it again, and you get losses for this game and possibly retrospective if it makes a difference. But like this is where this is where my mind goes, and maybe I'm just a bit more brutal than you guys.
No, because you've got a situation in your mind, of a whether it happened or not, or exact thing. It's these situations is such a broad like variables in all of this. There's times where people. It's every circumstance is different. I think just making sure that you uphold what your values are, right, and never expect people to have the same values, but never sacrifice your values.
Yeah.
And make sure that if any time that you have felt like you've been caught off guard or you feel uncomfortable, and then you bring that up and say, hey, I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable right now, I can't really see any dice, I can't see exactly what you're doing with your models, I'm feeling a bit, you're mumbling a bit or whatever, do you reckon you could fix up a little bit for me and just speak up a bit, be a bit clearer and stuff like that. And if you've tried to resolve it in like a really clear, like, being like, this is how I feel, like not like this is what you are doing stuff, right, and I don't like it, be like, I'm feeling a bit, a bit anxious and a bit agitated right now, and I don't really know what's going on. I feel like this is happening, and stuff like that. Words are really strong, and I think that you can use words quite softly but but firm enough to be like and to really state that you're not feeling well, and then I think that you can base your further actions on the reactions you get from that person
Yeah.
when you've
I guess that's the balance, though, and kind of what you were talking about, Ben, was when you're the player, you can make sure you're true to your values, but don't put them onto your opponent because you can't expect them to have the thing. But when you're the TO, how do you? It's like that fine balance of being able to bring or not have your values influence a decision too much, because if you agree, let's pretend you agree with the player that's been aggrieved, you don't just go, get the fuck out of my tournament, you bastard.
Mm. I don't agree with anyone, so I'll be on a fact finding mission as a TO, and I'll make sure every time they peter off from what facts are happening to either what I think happened or this is how I felt when this happened, and emotions, and I'll make sure and be like, all right, okay, but I'll just stop you there. Go back to where you said this happened. What happened after that? Keep drawing them back. So they can still be emotional, but what you're doing is not letting them get run away with themselves.
Yeah.
And then you can try and do that, and you speak to the other party, right? And then you can kind of generally what happens is you can only pull them apart so much. They're generally together, and you can suss out the situation. By body language and stuff before you've even spoken to them. So you can kind of already tell, like, especially in the first 30 seconds, if you haven't already told by then, how far this has gone. Because there's a scale of conflict, right? And you get to past a point, even with 40k, when nerds are talking about rules, where you're past a point of no return, where you literally can't fix this situation, right? And then you can be like, right, lads, you know, can we come to an agreement? This is my suggestion. And what I'll do is sometimes I've had times where I've TO'd something, made a call, and both parties have been very upset with my call, and because I've made the wrong one. And what I tend to do, not so much made the wrong one, but maybe because I've just tried to. I haven't explored every single option, and I think one of the options I now explore is like, what do you expect? What would you like the resolution of this situation to be? What does this resolution of this look like to you? Do you know what I mean? And you can ask them that in a very adult way to each of them. You're better off doing this individually, and then you can really suss out exactly what their end game objective is, right? And you can suss out people who are just like, I want them kicked from the tournament, and you're just like, okay, well, look, if it comes to that, that won't be because that's what you want. It'll be because I found a good enough reason for that to happen. But I appreciate, your feedback of what you'd like to happen from this. Then you can approach the other player, and then you can kind of go from there. There's no really one size fits all result for this. There's you're different. Everyone's a different person. There's too many different personalities and too many different problems and variables out there. But I think just trying to like not let them get too emotional, and if they can't explain a story at least to the best of their ability, objectively, um, you need like and they're near the other player. If they can't You can't have a dialogue with a player and they're near to the table where the other player is present, then I think you need to split them up, and I think you're probably already past the point where it might not be able to be fixed at that point. But it really just depends on your personalities and how good and your conflict resolution skills, really. So
Yeah. Before we jump to the next one, Chris, anything you want to add on?
Now, all good.
Perfect. Well, let's just jump into the last point. Um, what type of tactics or things that you do to kind of maintain your own mental health after this type of thing happens? Just to say, no, I'm not a bad person, or I'm not a rabbit that people just can take advantage of. I don't know. These are things that are popping up in my head, but yeah, what do you do to keep yourself, get back into it, so to speak?
I'll be honest, I'd never told myself that I'm not a rabbit, but, good suggestion. I just, try to remind myself of all the good things that happened in the event. You know, it's easy to dwell on the one opponent who, you know, you didn't have a good time against, who you felt was being not a sportsmanlike player, but you know, remind yourself of all the other games, all the good fun you had, and just try to shift the focus.
Do you chat with people afterwards? Like, do you talk with mates or other people, or do you keep it kind of just to yourself?
Yeah, a bit of talking with people. Probably that's probably something I could do more. You know, I'm a fairly quiet person. You guys will know exactly how rare a sighting my posts are in the Ethos chat, but you know,
There's some
talking
good
can certainly
zingers
be a
though.
good thing. Look, normally what happens is Connor will bring attention to the fact that I haven't been saying anything, and then he'll set me up, and I'll see if I can
You dunk it.
say something worth saying.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Connor's the best wingman / layup guy, and all you need to do is just go boom and get all the
yeah,
accolades.
absolutely. Yeah.
All right, awesome. What about you, Ben?
I think it's exactly what Chris said. Plus, there's, I was just try and remind myself sometimes that it's, like when I get home, sometimes I've got to work the next day and stuff like that. Just remind myself that it's probably not the only thing in my life. I think, as hard as that is to do at the beginning, like when you first are feeling it, when you leave the event or whatever, and you're on your own kind of thing. But it does get better. But I think just remind himself that was just a blip, just a moment in time. Because really, 3 hours it's a long time to spend with someone that, if you're not having a good time with them, but it's not really a long part of your life, is it? And I think that I'm a
Well,
strong believer in
it feels like a long time when you're in the
it
middle of it
feels
though.
like a very long time, but in reality, it's not. And I think that, I always think to myself, well, I hope they don't behave like that with every single person they meet, or hope like no. I generally just hope that no one else had that experience. Really, do you know what I mean? And it was just me. Yeah. So that's really it.
Excellent. Well, look, thank you very much for the chat, guys. This has been very useful, and hopefully anyone else that's listening has gotten even just a little bit from us. But I know just sharing and talking about these ideas with you has been great. Promos. Is anything you guys want to promote? The things that are coming up, or just things that you guys are doing? I know, Chris, you started up something recently.
Yeah, so I've been doing some 40K coaching for the last few months, and that's been going really well. It's been fun, and so yeah, anyone who would like to get some coaching, reach out to me. You can message me directly, or T800 40K coaching on Facebook. So all kinds. I'm happy to talk lists. I do a list writing service where I'll make a list, do a full write up, and then we'll talk you through it, or we can talk tactics. We can anything you'd like to do. So yeah, get in touch if you're looking for that.
Wonderful.
Hey Simon, you should get Chris to write you a Dark Elder list, or or show you how to use some scourges.
That's a brilliant idea, Simon. I can do mates rates for you. I'll do 5% off. How about that, hey? It's the most generous offer anyone's ever given.
That's
He
right.
usually gives. He said he'd do it for me for 5% more, so I'd take that as a good offer.
Well, Sean was double price, so you're lucky, Ben.
Oh right, okay, cool, Sean.
I like what I'd have to do is say, all right, Chris, I want the Dark Elder list, but no scourges. And he says, sorry, I can't do it.
Yeah, no, I am happy to do any kind of janky list. Doesn't have to be top meta. So if you want to be like Simon, bring a terrible list with no scourges, that's totally fine.
Oh, we have to downsize each other, Chris. We absolutely.
Yeah, it'll be fun. See how easy it is for me to keep my scourges away from them.
All right, what about you, Ben? Anything you want to
No,
promote?
nothing for me. For the moment, still pretty quiet. Still, I did buy myself an Old World book the other day though, but stay tuned for that.
Nice. Well, McGowan, as always, he's running 5 of the team tournaments up here, so I'm trying to go to all of them. If I may miss one, just because I think it's Serbia and Easter on the same day, but other than that, I'll be looking to do that. We've got the next one coming up, I think, in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that.
I'm going to come up for one this year.
Oh, wonderful. Excellent.
100%.
It'll be good to catch up.
Yeah,
Awesome.
for sure.
Yeah, I might. Let me know which one that is, Ben. I might try and join you because I'm keen to go to one too.
Sounds good. I think there's one in May, actually.
Probably won't be that soon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably best
Maybe
for me
we won't
to
end up going.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, maybe we won't go to the same one, but that's all fine.
Yeah, that's right. No. We'll try and do it so we can do the same one, Chris. I'll wait for one for later in the year.
What we also do is we kind of split up a lot of the teams. Like, they don't try and make just like one mega team, so to speak. Like the Ethos guys, for example, we generally split over 2 teams, and like our team this time is 3 out of the 5 members are Ethos guys. Eric does kind of the same thing. Even then, it's still more competitive than most ATCs, but that's fine. It's I can't stop making these jokes. I'm sorry, I just can't. It's like Tourette's. No, but good luck to everyone that's doing ATC this year. I hear Tassie is doing a lot of prep. I talked to a bunch of them. This is not a meme, by the way. They're doing a lot of prep. Good luck to them. I don't have money on them in any way. I love the guys, but I love their spirit. I really do love their spirit. I don't know who is going to get the win this year, though. Chris, I know you New South Wales guys have been putting a lot of effort in, so
Some of the New South Wales guys, I'm not playing this year.
No. I'm talking to you as people who've been in this world. I'm not saying you're in this year's team.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm
I know.
not in this year's team for the first time in like 10 years. So, like,
I took this year off as well, but I do know a couple of the boys in the team, and they are hard at it. I can tell you that, and they've got a good bunch of blokes this year, so I'm pretty excited for them.
nah, that's good for them. I'll be excited for next year. Just this year for 10th. No, they
Yeah, let's wait for some more books to come out, all right? And then I'm sure it'll be better.
Yeah, awesome. All right, let's wrap this one up, guys. Thank you very much for the chat.
Thanks for having us on.
I'll catch you guys later. So thank you for anyone who's stayed to the end, and hopefully this topic was useful. All right, bye.